as Philip Larkin put it, what will survive of us is love. And that's, you need it. Fiction turns out to be about love. That you have to love the reader, and you have to love the art form. And all writers are lovers of life. As Updike again said, you know, to describe is to celebrate.
So do you normally start with like a hello, welcome, or do we just dive in? What kind of kid were you?
I was the light of my mother's life. And it was my stepmother, the novelist Elizabeth Jane Howard, who gave me Pride and Prejudice. I thought I wouldn't understand a word of it, but of course it's tremendously accessible. And I began it and then went and knocked on the door of her study after about an hour and said, "You've got to tell me, does Elizabeth marry Mr. Darcy? And does Jane marry Mr. Bingley?" And she was going to be harsh and say, "Well, you'll have to read it yourself," but she melted and said, "Yes." The first piece in the book is about what happened to literary fiction, in that it was very obscure and a quiet minority interest. Newspapers particularly got so fat that what were they adding? There wasn't more news, it was more features. And they worked their way through all the, you know, dud royals and rapist boxers and adulterous golfers and
celebrity chefs.
And they ended up reduced to having to write about writers. And novelists benefited from that.
How much of a mental queue of books do you have? How many ahead do you know you're going to be writing, do you think?
It's nice when you're finishing a book, as I am now, to have something, to give the subconscious something to do while you're finishing it. The subconscious does a great deal of the work. So much so that you almost feel you could just lie in a hammock with a drink and the subconscious would do it all. But you've got to do the typing, because you can't whistle them out of the air.
Right.
When people say, "Why did you decide to write a book about so-and-so, this subject, the Holocaust?" That's a description of writer's block for me. You don't decide. It's got to choose you. Nabokov called it a throb. Updike called it a tremor, where a novel comes to you. And nothing about that tremor appeals to you other than it's a novel you can write.
Right.
And then the adventure begins.
So in this book, The Rub of Time, you write a lot about aging and time passing. Do you think you're a kinder writer now? Do you think age has made you kinder?
The oddest people are cruel. I mean, there's a lot of cruelty in Updike, although he's such a sunny man, he was. When I interviewed him, he said, "Yeah, and I think it's the best of me, there's cruelties." If someone say, "You're not cruel anymore in your fiction," that would be worrying. You can divide up what a writer has, and all writers have a bit of genius and a lot of talent. There's no doubt that your genius weakens, but your talent gets sharper in that you know how to pace a scene, you know how to modulate. Yeah, and then at the other end of the scale is James Joyce, who has got a lot of genius and no talent at all.
Now, you're pretty clear in your book about why you write fiction, that it's sort of, you must, that you don't really have a choice. Why do you write nonfiction? What do you get out of it?
Every time I write it, I find myself writing an essay. I think, why did I take this on? You know, because it's not fun. You do feel very happy and proud when you finish it, when it comes out. And there it is, looking quite convincing.
So still, after your long and storied career, you have doubts about...
Well, it's such hard work. Work ethic, I think, is the explanation. I inherited that. No religion, but Protestant work ethic, very strong when I was growing up. And Christopher Hitchens had it too. And it's got to be getting on with something.
You must be doing something, yeah.